And we're live for episode 36 of Agencyphonics. Welcome, everybody. Today I have I want to say sort of famous or notorious, but Matt Desmier. We'll find out the best way to describe him in a moment. But I've known Matt now. It feels like I've known Matt for over 10 years, or certainly around 10 years ago. I first met him. And we'll talk more about him in a second. But first of all, just as always, a couple of quick thank yous. Thank you to the guys at Forecast for sponsoring Agencyphonics and Agencynomics, the community. As you all know, it's a not-for-profit social enterprise that we run, helping supporting now, next, and future generations of agencies, independent agencies. We've also just formed an alliance as well with the Alliance of Independent Agencies as well, or the Alliance is now called. So we're going to be working a little bit closer with those guys. And yeah, as always, just another quick thank you to Wirehive for providing all of the equipment and the technical stuff behind the scenes. And Caitlin today is producing the show from the Wirehive studio, but we are both remote. So you are where, Matt?
I am in Poole. I'm down on Poole Quay, just behind.
So this morning we were talking to Andrew in Glasgow, and now we're down at Poole, two ends of the country in one day. Yeah. So you in the Bournemouth Poole area, everyone knows you, that sort of Dorset area, because over the years you've run loads and loads of different initiatives around supporting the creative communities down there. But for those of you who don't know you, do you fancy giving us a little bit of an intro, a little bit of background?
Okay. Yeah, so I run a consultancy called Wise Old Uncle. I do branding, culture, and innovation. I guess I work with agencies. I've got a handful of agencies I work with, handful of startups that some big government clients, and some brands as well. And I focus on positioning. Well, I focus on branding and positioning, but it all kind of starts with the culture. So that's why I say culture, innovation, and branding are all inextricably linked as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, I guess notorious in the nicest possible sense of the word. I've just been a loud voice, a big fish in a small pond for a very long time.
Yeah, but it's the events that before really Bournemouth and Poole and that whole Dorset area, in a way it feels like before it was really on the big creative map, you were there pretty early on, really. Yeah. Before the whole tech explosion happened, right?
Yeah, well, I was very fortunate that for the first 10 years of my career, I was paid by three different government agencies to get to know as many agencies as I could. So that my job was find out who was good at what they did and tell as many people as I could about them.
Yeah.
And make them better. I think that was where we first met. So you say 10 years ago, I think it was nearer 15, maybe more.
Really? Wow. Was it not as good as that? I'm losing track of time.
Well, there was an event at Bournemouth University that you spoke at.
Yes.
With Simon Milanofi.
Yeah. At Bournemouth Uni, it was called Eden. Is that right?
Yes, that was the one. That was one, Eden, with Nicholas Stevens.
Yeah. So, oh my gosh, and the Bowshot crew. Wow. So was that? So you're right.
Yeah.
That was 15 years ago. It's even longer than I remember. And I used to go down and sit on this panel, and there was a guy called Martin. If you ever remember him, and he is from the South Coast as well. Lovely guy. And I always used to tell the story how I started my agency with 4,500, and he'd started his business with like 50p or something, and it always kind of upstaged me a little bit. But you've run a huge amount and curated a huge amount of events, and almost in a way, what almost for me, from my eyes, could have been the South by Southwest really of the South Coast at one stage, because you had lots of people coming down, didn't you, from all over the UK, world.
Yeah, well, I was flying them in from all over the world. I was flying them in from San Francisco. I flew them in from Australia. I flew them in from the Balkan states. And at one point, I was desperately trying to create South by Southwest, but damn, it's expensive, and I just don't think at that point Bournemouth had the cachet that it needed to make that happen.
Yeah,
You know, sadly.
yeah. So
But they were good times. You know, it was doing that. So through those events that I used to run and the kind of community that I was involved in curating, it put Bournemouth on the UK's map. 2015, we got recognised as the second or the fastest growing hub in the UK.
I remember
There was loads of exciting stuff that no one knew about.
Yeah, and you've got a fantastic university down there, and I guess there was lots of talent coming out of there that was then staying in the area, right, from a technology or from a creative perspective.
Well, I mean, some of them stayed in the area, but what generally happened was they all wanted to come back to the area. They'd go off and do something somewhere, but once you've lived with the sea on your doorstep and 6 miles of golden sandy beaches, I guess, unless you're a certain type of person, the big urban areas don't cut it. You want that lifestyle. You want the mix, the mix of an exciting work environment, but you want to be able to go and play as well.
Yeah, you know, actually, it reminded me when when Pete and I finished the book, we actually went to Bournemouth. I stayed in the hotel on the front, and then literally wrote for about 18 hours a day. And then walked along that beach every day. Stopped off for a bit of brunch or lunch on one of the restaurants on the front. It was a really great place actually to get inspiration and also get away from day to day. So I can see the appeal.
I mean, and well, it was you introduced me to NT Rainey, who also lives down
Of course,
here.
the legend.
I think, chatting to her about it, she was like, it's nice to get out of the city. It's nice to get out of London and just come down here and recharge. So I guess my focus, my purpose was to try and introduce that to a lot more people. The more amazing people that we had around here and the more amazing companies, the easier it was to recruit, was to entice people back to the area so that, the successful companies got even more successful. That was always my plan.
What do you think will happen post-COVID for the Bournemouth area? Do you feel that more people will seek to come out of London and move back to these to more, more rurally areas and by the sea or in the countryside? Have you seen evidence of that already where you are?
Yeah. So I'm currently squatting in one of my clients' offices, and they've just recruited 3 senior members of their team who have all relocated out of, one's come from Oxford, one's come from London, and one's come from Manchester, I think, and relocated down here because it was like, if we're working remotely and the clients are remote and the team's semi-remote, then I don't need the overheads of being in the. I can be down there, and Bournemouth 2 hours away from London. I've got to admit though, I miss London. I miss London terribly right now.
Yeah,
I just want to be there.
Do you know something? What I'm not missing is the commute. I'm just not missing the getting on the train and getting stuck, with the train last year with the strikes. Then obviously the tragic suicides that happen, and you get stuck. I remember getting stuck on the train for like 4 hours one night. I don't miss a lot of that, but I do miss, you're right, the actual, if I could just spend from like 11 o'clock until 3 o'clock or go back after a commute, I'd be a happy person. But yeah, it won't be long. We'll be back to normal. We're creatures of habit. I think a lot more will return to normal than we realise.
I mean, that was the thing. So one of the big communities. And when the guy we would all mix with one another. The last event that 100 people turn up to an event on the beach in Bournemouth, to a digital and creative professionals, but 1,200 people turned up.
Wow. That,
council tried council tried to stop it. They were there. You're not organising a networking event, you're organising a party. And I guess it was.
Yeah. I am losing. I've got a bit of interruption on this signal this end. I don't know whether. Can you hear me okay, Matt? Just so I can check.
Yeah.
I'm trying to work out if it's my end or your end. I think, yeah, Kate says she's losing you as well. I don't know whether internet is. Let me just quickly check our connection. This is one of the joys of our new remote setup, and this is the second time. Yeah, my 1 gig down is still working. So this is the joys, because actually it's the second time we tried to get you on, because the first time we had a technical problem as well. So, you there?
Yeah, I'm here, and I've got a pretty strong signal, so I don't know what the problem is.
Okay, yeah, I'm on 1 gig download. We'll have to blame the live feed probably playing around with us. So so a couple of quick things. I mean, one of the things, Matt, that I've always really loved about you is you've always had really strong opinions on how badly agencies typically do their branding and the way they communicate their positioning. Do you want to just talk a little bit about that for us?
Yeah, I mean, I got really frustrated with seeing award-winning full-service digital agency. It got to the point where every agency, even if it was just 3 people, was an award-winning full-service digital agency. And so when I started, working with some of these guys, I'd be there going, you're not full service. And actually, I think you're doing yourself a disservice by saying you're full service. Why don't you pick a specialism and proudly be really good at that? And if you can offer other services, and if you're going to do it and use freelancers, do it openly and transparently. But actually, if you want to create a mark for yourself, be really, really good at one thing and shout about that. So that's my thing about, the idea of being a digital agency. I think, so I'm old enough to remember analog TV. So I'm old enough to remember when digital was a thing. But now, we haven't had analog TV since 2012. Digital is like, I'm an electric agency. You don't get any coal-fired agencies anymore. They're all electric. And you don't get many non-digital agencies. They've all got to have some kind of digital capability.
Yeah, it's very true.
That for me is the bit. It's like, yeah, look, I think winning awards is brilliant, and you should definitely shout about it, because it definitely creates a reason to inquire further in the minds of a client. It validates you and your service offering. But why don't you don't have to have it in your strapline. You don't have to just say I'm an award-winning agency.
Yeah.
You can demonstrate it in other ways.
Yeah, you're right. I think there was certainly a time, and maybe it is still the case in many cases now, that agencies are often quite me too in the way that they position and stand out. And I think I'd probably been guilty of it at some stage on our own journey. Sometimes it's you're a bit too close to your own business. That's why sometimes I think branding's always done best when someone outside is looking in, right? Because you're just, even the branding agency should always go out to someone. because it's just good to get that perspective differently on your business. But you did do some research. I'm sure we had a bit of banter about this on LinkedIn at one stage. You did some research around agencies and awards, and actually found, didn't you, that agencies that entered awards actually typically grew quicker or something? Was that right?
Yeah. So over a period of 4 years, I surveyed each year 200 agencies, and I asked them a bunch of questions, and one of them was, have you ever won any awards? And gathering all the data over the 4 years, I found out that if you won an award than an agency that hadn't won an award. And it didn't matter what the award was. It could be Dorset Business Awards, or it could be the Lovies. It really didn't matter what it was. But on average, you would turn over 8 times more.
Wow.
Delving into that a bit further, what happens there is actually it's the attitude, it's the growth mindset to go after the awards. If you've got a mindset of, we've done some really great work here, I want to enter it into it, I want to shout about it, and you go through the process of working out what your story needs to be, working out what the narrative is, working out where the benefits were, working out what it was you did to end. That's a whole process that you've got to go through as an agency to enter that award. So I don't think it was the winning of the award, it was the entering of the award meant that the people running that business had a different mindset to the ones that didn't. Yeah, that's why I think they turn over more.
Yeah, I mean, I had in the book I talked a little bit about what I call fame clients, and that when clients buy agencies, when they procure agencies, they're normally looking for 2 things, right? They're looking for for great outcomes and a great experience. And, the experience for them could be different things. It could be learning. It could be socializing. It could be helping my career get better. It could be the work and the results, but I think there's definitely an element of clients that also like I used to enter awards, I did it for my clients really more than the agency. I mean, actually for the people too, because we want to celebrate the great work we did. And we weren't brilliant at awards at Blue Halo, if I'm honest. We were in a lot of fast growth awards, which aren't really necessarily about the work, but definitely there were clients who wanted to look good in their job. And if you help them win an award, that really helps and help build loyalty. And of course, then when you start doing the work, you start thinking about how do you make the work better, right? As you said, because you want to make sure that you can enter it into an award. So you start to think about the effectiveness. You start to think about how can you add value to the work, right?
It makes you think about the work in a slightly different way. You think about, there will be, a myriad of clients where you might just be doing their people and their SEO, and actually that's quite nice and it ticks along and you get a lovely retainer out of it. But there'll be other ones where, as an agency, you see there's a real opportunity here, and if we can make these guys spike massively, I'm going to want about that. And I know it's the way people think. So I used to get quite frustrated with agencies that would all go, "Oh, we don't enter awards. We don't believe in awards. I don't need my muse tested like that." And I'm like, well, I think that's a bit blinkered in an approach, because actually the team that you're working with might welcome celebration. They might like to know that their work is being valued, that you as a boss think the team around you deserve to have their work put into an award and celebrated. But you can't just, I mean, you can just do the odd award here and there. But actually, if you get into a routine of going, we're going to enter this one it's a routine, because it's muscle memory. It's about getting you thinking in a certain way. And that's why the ones that win a lot of awards are bigger and better than the ones that don't. Yeah. but it wasn't so much about the shouting that we've won the award. It was, for me, it was always the process of entering awards is the important bit.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I love great and great. Great validation as well of the sort of upsides it can bring to your business if you get it right. So, and I mean, I think there's so many benefits, as you say. It's not just about boosting the ego of the owners or get the team validation. It helps the clients, it helps probably the agency improve the work, and it probably does again underpin that, as you said, growth mindset, really, that you're thinking bigger about the business. I think it's always probably good advice to try and judge some awards, Matt. Do you think as well, before you start entering them?
Oh yeah, I mean, I've judged quite a few awards, and you get to see the scope of some of the work out there, and that is if you're running an agency and you're going to be entering some awards, you want to just see how do other people put these together.
Yeah, are you like me? Do you always look for the underdog? Whenever I'm judging awards, I'm always really empathetic with the underdogs. Like, I'll see the agencies with all the money, they've got all the flash entries, but sometimes there's just a piece of work there that's just, they haven't had big budgets, but they've achieved massive results. But it does give you really good insight.
When I was head of enterprise for University Bournemouth for 5 or 6 years, and I used to sponsor a load of awards. And one year I sponsored the creative project of Dorset, I think it was, and we had a big agency enter, and they put together this incredible entry, right? Everything you could possibly imagine had gone into this thing. And then there was this really small company that just entered their little project in. And I thought the little project, the impact that little project had on the business itself, as well as the client itself, just exponentially bigger and better than the big agency. So I awarded it to the little client. Man alive, I got hate mail from this large agency because they were like, we transformed that business. I was like, well, you didn't. You put a new logo on it and you did a lovely launch campaign. This company over here really transformed their client. They went all out. And they were more creative, but it was about the underdog there, and it was about the impact. It was thinking about the impact and the effectiveness. What was it that really happened there?
And I think that, that's, I mean, the point that both of us are making here really is, so a lot of people just don't think their work's good enough to enter awards, but especially when you're a smaller growing agency. And so it's always worth, do some judging, get some insights on how people present their awards, and then, maybe get some confidence to start entering it yourself. And you'll probably, as you rightly said, you've got to get the momentum with it. And I think there are some useful tips. Like, sometimes I'd always say to clients now, just get one great piece of work and look at the event calendar, so the awards calendar, and try and find half a dozen that you could adapt this not fudge it, but genuinely enter into lots of different awards. And you'll get some runners up, and you might win a couple, and actually it saves you having to write literally 3 award entries a month uniquely, but you can put more effort into doing one really well.
And the lovely thing is as well is you can always get feedback. I know when I judged the Wirehive Awards a few years ago now, but I think I was doing one of the e-commerce ones, and I got in touch with them all.
Did you?
After the event, I thought it was, I'd been asked to do this. I'd thoroughly enjoyed doing it, and I'm an opinionated sod, so I'm going to contact all of these people and say, well done, this was really great. I'm sorry, the reason why these other guys won was this and this, but this was a great piece of work, and I'm sorry you didn't win. And it was about, and I then ended up having conversations with all of them.
That's great. I mean, I think that's really, really good. And I do think that it's also really important for agencies on their journey to try and connect as well to people judging the work, or become part of it, because I think it just helps you build your network out as well, right? So it's just all good business connections and contests. But that's quite admirable of you to go out and give people some feedback. I think that's I think I once did the Daddy Awards with Phil Jones, and there was so many entries. I think I was judging like probably the toughest one. It was like the paid search category, but there must have been 70 pieces or 100 entries per category, and I had 3 categories after. And I mean, it was really, really tough process, but actually through it all, you could just see how, the education piece on how to enter an award, how to stand out, how not to sound like the same as everybody else,
Yeah.
And also judging was great because I met some fantastic people, by doing that, which is always good. So tell me, one of the other things that I've really been impressed with, Matt, about the whole area that sort of Bournemouth Pool area is the what's the name of that talent event where you bring everyone who works in this industry together?
Meat Draw.
Yeah. So Meat Draw, are you still involved with that?
It's no longer running. It no longer happens. I think it stopped about 18 months ago.
Yeah. I always thought that was a really clever. Were you originally one of the founders of that, or was that somebody else?
No, it was the team at Red Web. The team at Red Web were the first guys that got it up and running. I think. Well, there were like Simon Milanafi and the guys at Adido were involved as well. But I think they just they all got together and said, if we were anywhere else, we'd all be drinking in the same pubs. We all know each other. Yeah. We don't compete over work, so let's just go and hang out. I think the first time they ran that event, 130 people turned up to a pub on a Thursday night.
Wow.
I got involved at about event number 3, and I'm a benevolent dictator and quite egomaniacal, so I took it over and said, right, this is how we're going to make it even better. And it was, for me, it was always like, if we do it once every 3 months, rather than try and do it once a month or as and when, let's do it once every 3 months, so that if you miss one, it'll be 6 months between visits, and you'll kick yourself because everyone's talking about you weren't at Meat Draw. So all of a sudden it became this thing that everyone in the industry wanted to go to, and because I'd had a job, I suppose, or had a job at the time where I was paid to get to know agencies, I had a list of some 400.
Wow.
Small one-man bands, two-man bands, up to Imagine Publishing and Red Web, where there's 100-odd people. And I was like, you need to come. So I would be on the phone to them, bending the ear of the bosses to get them to come along. But I invited the team from Tech City, or Tech Nation as it is now, to come along.
Yeah.
And they were like, we've never seen anything like this. How have you made this happen? There's a real community. And I think the point was, it was a very level playing field. There was no hierarchical thing there. It was run by volunteers. There was no money ever changing hands. It was all for the good of the community, and no one was competing over work. It was just, we're going to be on that pub on that day and come and say hello and meet some people. But we did. I mean, I think I was involved in 40 events over the year for Meat Draw. But it was something else. I just think it had its moment in the sun, and the community moved on. These things don't need to last forever as much as you might want them to. You've just got to think, you know what, we've done it now. Let's move on and do something else.
I quite like the way, for those of you who didn't really know what it was. It was almost like, if anyone was working within, the creative industries. I say creative industries, but it was, pretty much anyone from agencies, but also if you were working in a brand as well, it just gave you a chance to come together. And I really like that. Sometimes agencies could be quite secular in their own groups, but the fact that you could actually bring people working in brands in digital out, meeting each other. And I think I've always thought it was a very, very smart thing to happen. And but you're right; these things don't have to live forever. I mean, I think Glug is probably a similar thing. You know, the Ian's gig, and that's kind of gone global. And I'm not sure how that's going now on post-COVID. I think they've still been doing events. I'm sure I've seen a few, but so I always liked for a talent.
Glug was our inspiration. It was. If we were in London, we'd be going to Glug. So let's just do a Glug version down here.
Yeah.
But one of the things that we did that made it appealing to, because when it started, it was for digital animals. That was its strapline. And so we got rid of that as a strapline, and we sort of went, it was for the creative economy. We wanted videographers there. We wanted illustrators there. We wanted agency bosses there. I wanted the account managers and the client service team to be there, because they've got to understand how to talk to those digital and creative folk. And so we created a theme for each one that was inclusive. Like one theme we did a mad professor theme. So we had like Van de Graaff generators in the corner of the room, and we had magicians wandering around, and it was just, we had there was a bunch of people dressed in white coats that were showing you around, and it was just about to make it a bit of an event, make it a bit of a spectacle, that if you didn't understand SEO, it really didn't matter, because no one was talking about that. There was never any talks. We never did talks at them. Yeah. It was just turn up, and we were, there was a team of 16 volunteers. And the role of those 16 volunteers was, if you saw someone on their own, go and talk to them and go and introduce them to someone. And that was all we ever did.
I love that. So Matt, the other thing that always, when I think about you, and I think that in some ways you kind of pioneered quite a few things. And one of the things that I would say is that you always had a very, very strong personal brand identity. And in a world today where it's like the in thing for personal branding, to be a key person of influence, Daniel Priestley calls it, you always used to have the most incredible visual identity. Like you would rock up in these suits with short safari outfits and birds on your jackets, and I've seen you speak on stage, and you're always visually creative. But actually, in a way, you're very much ahead of your time, because now it's become, very, very important, I think, to most business owners, especially agency owners, to really work on, not stop hiding behind their company brand, and to actually bring themselves out now, and to be able to, to have a personal brand as well as a company brand that is equally as strong as each other. So
well, look, I've got a big ego, and it needs feeding. And so I suffer from a very, very strange sense of paranoia that people are going to forget who I am.
Right.
And I think this comes from my sister. So I've got two older sisters. My eldest sister is 6 years older than me, and she takes great delight in telling me she has no recollection of me before the age of 16. She got married when I was 16, and that's her earliest memory of me. So that sort of stays lodged in your head, and I don't want people to forget about me. So I end up being the loudest person in the room, and I like bright colours. But those suits that you talk, so I've got 6 of those, 6 short suits that kind of became my key thing, and it was mainly because no other bugger's going to copy that. That's mine. That is mine and mine alone.
True.
So if you see someone in a flowery short suit, that is almost certainly going to be Matt Desmier. But and I did it. So I organised a trade mission and took 25 agencies to California. We went to Los Angeles, And we spent a week touring around Los Angeles. We were the 12 of us were speaking at a big conference over there, and we met a load of startups, and I was constantly in a short suit. And the Americans are brilliant for this. I'd walk up to them and I'd be chatting to them, and I'd be just like, "Do you like my suit?" And they're like, yeah, that's something else. I was like, "You're not going to forget this suit, are you? My name's Matt Desmier. Here's my card. I'll call you in a week." And that was it. And then, it created a connection so that when I got back in touch with them, they knew exactly who I was, and they just had this nice picture in their head, and they remembered me. I did the same with Don Monkhouse. So when I was running Silicon Beach, the conference, I think it was like the second year.
Yeah.
I was after a sponsor, and Don Monkhouse was MD of Pier 1 at the time, the hosting company. He was talking at an event in Southampton, and I rocked up a mint green pinstripe short suit, and I sat on the front row whilst he was doing his presentation. And he was brilliant, and he's always, I've got a lot of time for Dom, and everything that he talks about, he makes a hell of a lot of sense. But afterwards, there was a big queue of people wanting to talk to him, and I stood patiently in the queue. And when I got there, I was like, "Do you like my suit?" And he's like, "Yeah." I couldn't miss that suit. I was like, "I run a conference. Would you mind if I contacted you about sponsoring it?" It was like, "Absolutely. Call me tomorrow." And it was an immediate like that. That when if I just called him up or emailed him, he'd have no idea who I was. He'd have no reason to want that conversation to go any further. But I'd made an impression. I'd managed to plant that seed in his mind, and so he was willing to have a further conversation with me.
Yeah,
and I guess that's what it's all about, right?
Yeah, and if you flip it around now, and I mean, you're someone who's always been known for curating really interesting events. Like, you always seem to have a really good a process for finding speakers that are a little bit left off field, not the usual kind of middle of the road conversations. And you curate fantastic events. I mean, it's to be marveled. But I guess, like, you know that by being an alternative, visual identity, being a bit more interesting, a bit non-conformist, that's going to hopefully get you more opportunities to speak and more opportunities to get these kind of gigs, right? So
I mean, that was always part of the plan as well. I could remember turning up to Neil Perkins' Google Firestarters because Richard Huntington, the chairman of Saatchi & Saatchi, was there, and I'd seen him speak a myriad of times. And how on earth was I going to get this super busy guy to come down to Bournemouth? And it's a 2-day conference, and I want to drag him out of the city, bring him down to Bournemouth to speak to a room full of people that he probably wouldn't ever be in contact with any other time. So it was just about, the minute I walked up to him, he already knew who I was. I'd already popped up in his feed somewhere along the way. I went, "Hello, I'm Matt Desmier." He was like, "Yeah, I know who you are. Yes, I will do it." Even before I'd asked him, he was like, yeah, I'm in. You just tell me when, I will come. Brilliant. I had this. That was me trying to create something that was different from everything else that was out there. And it's the same with agencies at the moment. Like, I'm putting on a marketing conference that looks at the future of marketing. There's 101 of them. How am I going to get a speaker there? But actually, I know you're that guy. You're the guy that doesn't put the agenda out, that doesn't tell anyone what they're speaking about, it's all done a little bit haphazardly, but everyone seems to be really excited about it. I created an experience rather than a conference. Yeah. And that was the secret, I think, to the success of Silicon Beach.
Yeah. And Silicon Beach was definitely, I mean, I in a way, I kind of think it's a shame that, it wasn't able to become, because there isn't really, is there? I mean, there's the Made Festival up in Sheffield, and I know that we obviously got things like Mind, where I heard you speak actually years ago. That was a very good talk you did that day. But it always felt like Silicon, is it Silicon Mines or Silicon Beach? We're going to get it right.
Silicon Beach.
Silicon Beach was always going to be something that was going to be this permanent, you know, the whole town would be taken over by people all around the world.
And yet when I was putting it on, only 40% of the audience came from Bournemouth.
Oh, really?
I couldn't drag the people from Bournemouth kicking and screaming to it. They came from all over the country down to this thing. But if they were on their doorstep, I guess there was a certain complacency to it being on your doorstep. But when I started it, so you had Drew doing Like Minds in Exeter and Herb doing Thinking Digital up in Newcastle, and we were the only three people, other than the odd TEDx thing, that was happening. By the time, so I did my last Silicon Beach in 2018, and by the time I'd ended it, there was one a week happening somewhere, and I couldn't compete with that. You know, suddenly being a speaker had become quite a thing. So every man and his dog wanted to be a speaker, me included. I want to be a speaker on there, so I'm going to get on every stage I can. And actually finding that way to differentiate itself became much, much harder. So the idea is, if I wanted to, so I spoke to three publishing companies about buying Silicon Beach to turn it into something much, much bigger. And I got cold feet. That actually, if I made it too big, I would lose the experience that I'd worked really hard to create. There was something very intimate about Silicon Beach. If it got too big, I wouldn't be able to control it. And I was all about what the guiding principle whenever I've been putting on events is, what will people say 2 weeks later? What will they be talking about 2 weeks later? And invariably it's the food. They're always going to talk about the food 2 weeks later. You know, if you present 25 speakers, they're only going to remember a tiny little thing of something a few of them said. So they won't talk about the speakers. They will talk about the food. They will talk about my outfit, and they will talk about the people that they met. And as long as I can make sure that those three things work really well, then as long as there's some good talks as well, then we're quids in.
So what have you seen? You know, what's been, I guess, the best things you've seen since the world has moved to kind of more online events and talks? Is there anything that's really stood out for you? Any approaches you really like?
So David Hyatt over at the Do Lectures. So those guys have been doing some great things. They've just finished a program with Duke Stump, who used to be VP of marketing for Nike years ago, and then he went to Lululemon. And they did a program over 3 weeks where they had invited speakers coming in, and there was a load of pre-recorded talks, but they released them at certain times of the day, and they ran a Slack channel alongside it, and they created a community of 1,500 people with, you know, and there was a real clear vision about what they were doing and the message, the message they were trying to put out there and the connection that they were trying to make. What they didn't do was just take an offline conference and put it online.
Yeah.
So there were some wonderful films of Duke just talking. Then there was a few, you know, interviews. There was guest speakers coming in. They did a couple of live activity every now and then. But what they did was they said, we'll do it over 3 weeks. Right? Normally this would be a 2-day event, but we'll split it up over 3 weeks. And it just meant that you could connect into it a lot better. It understood that me sitting staring at a screen for 2 days is not going to create the better experience for me. But me dropping in twice a week for an hour slot or a 2-hour slot, and then keeping the conversation going over Slack, that will create the same experience. I did it. Seth Godin did it as well. Right at the start of lockdown, I joined up with a Seth Godin program he was doing. And again, he'd release a film, 2 films a week over a 3-week period, but keep a whole conversation going over Slack. And it was about multiple channels, and they have curators involved then that join in the conversation and connect people up and keep it going. The thing that I always, like I said just now, about Silicon Beach, it was my outfits and the food, but it was also the people, right? It was, we sell conferences and we sell events on the features. So it's all about the speakers and the thing you're going to learn and the thing that they're going to say, right? That's the thing that we sell. That's the carrot we're dangling. But actually what everyone's buying is the experience, that you can't bottle that. So when you do an online thing, if it is just a succession of people talking, it's hard to get that experience. So what I think Seth and the Do Lecture people have got right is, how do we do the bits in between the talks? So with Silicon Beach, we always had 45-minute coffee breaks and an hour and a half for lunch. And I had a team of people that were going around speaking to people and keeping conversations moving, because it was the bits in between the talks that's where the magic happens. So the great things that I've seen online are the ones that understand it's the bits outside of the talks.
Yeah, I think that's. I mean, I haven't actually attended. I'm signed up to Do Lectures emails, but I've just not really engaged properly yet. But the content and the stuff they talk about is fantastic, and I love that whole, because I think there's a lot of people trying to make a lot of things around virtual platforms for events and things like this, but I'm not so sure. I don't know if you've seen the stuff that Tiff St James has been playing around with, which is hologramming people in to the stage. So there's a place in Northumberland.
Yeah, she did something about space the other day, didn't she?
Yeah, literally they had a live band with NASA. Yeah, they had a live band on stage at one event, and I think really, imagine you guys being able to, be able to beam somebody into somewhere in Bournemouth from the States. Great for the environment, a lot less impact. But be able to bring people in virtually almost, but then also in real life as well, because you're right, when we do our events in London for Agencynomics, it's funny, we don't ever try and find a cheap, horrible venue. We always try and find lovely venues so people feel real value from the ticket, and it does cost us a lot of money, and it's sometimes difficult because we're trying to run it all as not for profit and for charity, and it eats into those the funds that could be going to charity a lot. But nevertheless, more people come, they have a better experience. So everything you just said is good validation of that. And it's interesting as well, because pre-COVID, we'd actually stopped doing like evening drinks events, Matt, because we just found it was always the men that turned up to the evening drinks event, right? So we just swapped it out and did like daytime brunches, all morning in nice hotels in London and nice venues with good food, and all of a sudden we just got better quality, more diversity. Everything was much richer about the events that were happening. And so I'm kind of missing a little bit of that at the moment. And I mean, it's funny because I peaked out at I did one Zoom talk. It was about 300 or 400 people. And then globally, and then sort of since then, the numbers are sort of attendees are whittling down as people are getting a bit fatigued, aren't they? I think the winter doesn't help either, but that I will. Thank you for sharing those 2 examples. And
there's another one. There's a guy in Bournemouth called Mark Masters, okay. and he runs this thing called It's You Are the Media, and it's a monthly lunch club.
Okay.
And so it is very much about, look, we're going to be 2 hours over lunch. You get your lunch in. There's going to be a bit of a panel discussion. There might be someone talking, but it's about you guys. Obviously, lockdown happened and they couldn't happen. So we moved it online. And one of the wonderful things, well, I say wonderful, I find it slightly uncomfortable. But at the end of every lunch club, they have a sing-along. They literally have someone there on with a guitar or a piano, and then the lyrics come up on screen, and they get everyone singing a song, and then he goes around at everyone's camera, and he's like putting you up on screen, and you're singing along to this song. But he had Mark Schaefer over from the States doing it. He's got David Meerman Scott coming in on Thursday this week. And I think they're doing a Christmas themed one. So they have this big sing along. Now, it sounds cringeworthy, but what happens is the audience feel part of the event. Yeah. It stops it being a one-way broadcast thing, and it makes the people feel involved. So they've got, they use the chat function on Zoom, and you can send your questions in, and there's someone monitoring all of that, and they will act as the facilitator. But by the end of it, it's like, right, time for a sing song, and then everyone gets involved.
It's trying to create shared memorable experiences, isn't it? Because that's what you want to do. That's what you're trying to do with the food and your personal brand and everything. And this is just, when you do those things, you won't forget it, will you? Because it's so crazy. You're singing along that actually everyone probably feels really good for it, but they'll never forget that, will they?
No, and they'll tell people that it gets talked about, and then you end up with an army of evangelists who are going to do your marketing for you, and that's kind of what one of the things with Silicon Beach was an event. You've always got to have a goodie bag, right? So I had a goodie bag, but I wouldn't allow any of my sponsors to put anything in the goodie bag that couldn't be used. So there were no leaflets, no business cards. It was, who was it? We had, there was a recruitment agency up in London. They put a block of plasticine in everyone's bag. We had pens. We had, Dom had iPhone covers one year. We had branded iPhone covers. But the point was, I wanted those goodie bags to go home with people. I didn't want to leave the venue and walk out through Bournemouth and see my goodie bag shoved in all the bins. I wanted them to go home. So if I made sure that everything in it had a purpose and had a use, people would take it home. And then it sits in their office or it sits at home, and they're constantly reminded that they went to that event.
So actually, I got a really fantastic Christmas gift from an agency in Bournemouth called Quantum. I don't know if you know the guys there, Debbie.
Yeah, I know Quantum.
Well, I got I received a box 2 days ago. It was donuts, and it was basically make your own donuts. And so this weekend I was there piping away artisan donuts, and had to quite cleverly upload the picture, hashtag it. There's no way I'm going to win any prize for best donuts. That's sure. But again, I love, and also I ate it afterwards. Oh my gosh, I felt ill today. Too much sugar. Too old for eating donuts now. My teen years have gone, but but again, I love that whole kind of just it's a bit that's a little bit of old school kind of creative thinking, but I think a lot of what you've really said today, is really a good reminder that, when you run a business, you've got to have a bit of joy. You've got to have a bit of fun. You've got to be memorable. You've got to take a step back and, use your creative brain a little bit to try and stand out, be a little bit different, and just don't be normal and boring and conform, right? You run a business. You've got to have some fun doing it, haven't you?
Well, if you're going to do it all day, every day, then I said this to someone. I did a video for a young girl over in Portsmouth about 2 years ago, and before we started the recording, she'd said, "Well, what are your 3 business ethics? What are the things? I'm going to ask you about this." And I was like, "I don't do it for the money. If I'm doing it solely for the money, I'm pretty sure I could earn more doing something else. If all it is about is the money, then I'll go get a job in Tesco's. I'll be a store manager or something. I've got to like the person as well. Because if I don't like the person, then I'm not going to enjoy doing it, and I'm going to be doing it for the money." And it's like, and it was just those. It was like I've got to. And the last one was, I don't want to wake up dreading the day I've got ahead of me. And that is like, if I'm hating the project, or I don't like the person, or I'm only doing it for the money, then I'm not going to sleep well the night before. It's got nothing to do with morality. I'll happily work on warfare, or I mean, I don't get given the opportunity, but if it came along, I would help someone brand up the next set of Exocet missiles. But I don't have to do that. But if I wake up if I'm going to bed at night thinking, damn it, I've got that to do tomorrow, or I've got to work with that person, then life's too short for me to worry about doing that. I'll do something else.
Yeah, I think when you said the word exit I just had a Chinook fly over my house, or bomb my house, as I like to call it. But I think, that adage, which is overused a lot. If you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life. I think you really do get to appreciate that, when you do work that you love. And I think, but I think sometimes it's all very easy for all of us to get wrapped up, suddenly find ourselves, not taking that time away to think creatively, to try and mix up what you're doing so that it doesn't become too much of a routine, right? And just trying to, get inspired and do things a bit differently. And I think that's probably a big message, I think, for everyone listening today to this episode. I spoke to Andrew Dobby earlier on from Made Brave, and he's constantly doing crazy stuff to have fun, put joy into the business. And I think that is, and it extends his brand experience at the end of the day. I think it's something that we can't always take ourselves too seriously, right?
Well, I spent this morning with a client agency of mine just talking about a workshop we're going to be running next week.
Okay.
And they've got a really great culture, and they've got a real amazing group of people working there, and they've got big plans for the next 2 to 3 years. And I just went, well, we'll run a workshop because you've got a bunch of creative people in the next room. Let's get them all involved. You tell them what your plans are, and then I'll suck the ideas out of them. And that was it. And it was like, and it will just reinvigorate the team. They'll feel part of the journey that you're the business owner. It's your business. Yeah. It's your journey, but they're experiencing it every single day. So let's make them part of it, and let's make them excited about the things that are going to happen. And if someone comes up with some crazy left field, off the wall idea, well, actually, that might just work. And they're the people that will bring it to life for you, because they've come up with it, and they're the enthusiastic ones. I guess what that team struggle with is the day-to-day reality of all the work that they've got to deliver anyway, that it's sometimes hard to see the wood for the trees. Yeah. Which is when you get an exuberant bunny like me leap in the room going, I'll help you do that. So I was once described as an exuberant bumblebee bouncing from one project to the other.
Yeah, but I don't know whether you're like me. I'm quite good at getting cut through on things. So like sometimes, where people can over collaborate and overthink about things and actually get things done. Whereas I'm normally the person who helps try and just drive things through and get things actually done with people, which is difficult when you've got a full-time job to do, as you say, delivering other things. But when we started off this conversation, just before we went live, I was chatting to you about how, how are you finding agencies that you're working with and in your area? How have they been affected, by over the last few months? And I think you sound like you have similar views to me. Like actually, agencies on the whole are actually performing pretty well, all things considered.
Yeah, I think at the start of lockdown, there was so much uncertainty in the air. There was so much unknown. And actually, it probably for great swathes of the population, not just the agency world, that uncertainty made them batten down the hatches and go into survival mode. So I saw a lot of agencies furlough a load of staff, maybe let a load of staff go. And then within 6 weeks to 2 months, actually, they were like, I know we're okay. We're weathering this storm. Actually, we're really quite busy because although, look, my heart goes out to anyone working in hospitality or tourism or anywhere that's been massively affected by this. But actually, aside from those sectors, the world's carrying on, still doing stuff. They're still having to drive their businesses forward. They're still having to keep going. And you know what? It's the agencies and the teams that they've got that make that stuff happen. And what I'm seeing now, definitely in the last 5 weeks, is everyone going, we are busy. We are so busy. Not just that, we've got really good projects. We've got exciting projects. It's not just run-of-the-mill stuff. And now it's like we've got launch campaigns. People, if the whole world's suddenly online, how do we make a difference online? How does if our website was doing okay before, now it's got to do really well. So how the flow goes. What's the language?
It wasn't that swoosh, because they all talked about this sort of swoosh recovery, but originally they said it'd be a full V. But I think services sector has definitely bounced from what I've seen.
Yeah.
I mean, most conversations I have, even with the people I don't work with, have said to me, I'm a bit embarrassed to say this, but we're actually doing really well, and yeah. I think a lot of them have stripped out a lot of costs out of the business in terms of some of the offices overhead where they could do that. They've all got a lot less travel expenses. There's a lot less going on generally, I think, in the P&L. So they've had hopefully a bit more money to do some of their own marketing with as well, though. But I'm with you. I think actually it feels, and I mean, I guess the challenge is going to be, by the way, I've got quite strong views on the event business. I'll probably get in trouble for being too controversial, but I do feel that the event world was a world that needed reinventing a little bit. I think, that whole adage about, who's been best for your business transformation or digital transformation, the CEO, CIO, or COVID. I think COVID has forced a lot of businesses to modernize, right? And I think event businesses have been doing their same thing in the ways they've been doing for many years. And I think for me, there was a business that needed to be transformed. But that aside, there are clearly still skill shortages in agency world, right? I mean, you're telling me you've got people looking at the moment, although there's some people out there looking for jobs. But I'm guessing the training around agency people is going to be quite an important thing now, or people who are coming out of retail or those sectors are hit actually relearning skills maybe that could work in our sector.
Yeah, look, I think there's going to be client services has always been a massive thing for me that was underinvested in. Yeah, that actually, the agencies that I've worked with, and they've said we need a new business person. I was like, no, you don't. You just need better client services. If you held on to your clients better and you got involved in their businesses on a if you knew before they knew where the opportunities lied, you wouldn't need any business development at all. You just need better client services. And I think we're going to see I hope we're going to see a lot more investment in better client services. I think we're going to see a bit more investment within marketing for agencies, their actual own marketing. There's going to be, coming out of this, you're going to see some brilliant SEO people, some brilliant PPC people, because everyone's gone online, and the ones that are getting the better results, the ones that understand how it works better, are going to do really well. So there's going to be a load of people need to up those skills. But I think it's those soft skills of client services and marketing that the agencies that can put the money into making that stuff better are the ones that will really fly. Everything else is a commodity.
Yeah, Matt, everything you just said then was absolutely spot on the money as far as I'm concerned. I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think I saw that Campaign magazine, which I'm actually a massive fan of their content. It's actually on the whole very, very good, if not excellent. But they had a bit of a campaign going, literally a campaign from Campaign, very much is it the end of client services. And I think what they're basically really the problem is that a lot of client service people just don't understand their client's business anymore, because they can't keep up themselves with the way that business is moving forwards. It takes a lot of time and investment, and client service people who do, by the way, the client service people I know that do invest in really understanding their clients' objectives, their clients' business, their competitors, and they take, as you said, I love that line, taking ideas in ahead, before the clients even know they need them. And, to be honest with you, though, that I always tell, when I tell the story about Blue Halo, we were really guilty of not doing that for a long time. I mean, we were always reacting to projects and, but the day that I had a client turn around to me and say, hey, could you by any chance just show us what we should be doing next? And we took 20 ideas in, and then we turned a 20 grand project into a £1 million a year account. I was like, why have I not been doing this for the last 8 years? And so
I ran a workshop with a client last week, and I said, and their thing was, right, they're a 2.2 million turnover agency. I was like, what does it look like in 3 years? And the MD went, I know this, we're going to double it. I want to double the size of turnover. I was like, so what does that actually mean? Is that another 20 clients at a £5,000 a month retainer? Or is it 10 at 10? What does it really look like? And actually, if we look at your bigger clients here, why don't we, on a monthly basis, get your team in, and without your client ever knowing about it, we'll spend 2 hours coming up with half a dozen new ideas that the account manager can go in next week with, because that's how we'll turn them into a bigger client for you. Yeah. And it is being proactive and transformational about the clients you've got.
Yeah. What percentage of agencies do you think, Matt, what percentage of agencies do you think are naturally proactive? Because I think it's like
2, 5.
I mean, and I think anyone listening to this, I mean, there was once an agency I know, and they set a challenge to their business to double their client spend in 12 months. And I love that approach, right? How can we double what our clients spend in 12 months? And they did it, right? And because they set about trying to understand how they could do it. But I think a lot of people will say, oh yeah, but my clients don't have any more money. But if you take the ideas in, we've all lost a client that suddenly found £200,000 with their new agency they've just moved to, that they never had it when they were working with you. But often it's
part of coming up with those ideas is say, oh, and by the way, we've done the numbers on this, and if you do this, we did a SWOT analysis, or we modeled the business for you, and we think you can grow by this much by doing this. If you want that idea, it's yours to have. We're walking away. It's about, you don't be precious about it. It's like, here's another idea for you. Here's another idea for you. Call us when you're ready. And that you've got to give the stuff away, I guess, but you've got to come up with it in the first place.
I think a lot of it as well comes down to confidence as well around today. I think, there's I was talking to Jenny Plant, who helps us out a lot with client service training, and she was saying that she does a lot of work now, helping to write scripts out and stuff, because people just don't want to pick the phone up anymore, right? So they're all hiding behind computers, and actually it's sometimes just, you've got to get better at almost role playing certain things, because people have got so used to not being proactive that they then have a bit of a confidence gap around actually then suddenly trying to go to the client and present ideas and get those opportunities. So it definitely is an interesting area, but I'm with you. I think the investment in better client services is a really, really, really important thing moving forwards now. So the world's to rights there a little bit.
We'll see if it happens.
Yeah, I don't know if it will. I think it will improve, but I still think and there's more people supporting now, but it definitely needs to improve, because it's only going to get harder now for, because the way business is changing, for people to keep up all the time with what's happening. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for inviting me on. It's been
blown by.
Flew by.
Good to chew the fat with you, and I'm really, really encouraged by everything you said. Thank you for sharing your stories about the Do lectures. Was it Malcolm Gladwell? No, it was
Seth Godin.
and also just your synopsis there about the agencies doing well. It's really good to hear that it's not just me that's going around saying agencies seem to be doing well. It's happening in other parts of the country. And so and how many Christmas jumpers have you actually got, by the way? Because I keep seeing pictures on Instagram of like
I've got 11.
Okay. So
I got 11. I got this one at the weekend. This one is slightly more low key. I thought I'd just wear a low key one. I just love Christmas.
There was one the other day, I think it had planets and a unicorn on it, I think, from memory. That was
my birthday's Christmas Eve, so I just kind of really like Christmas.
Oh, that's great. So, well, okay. Well, at least we'll be out of lockdown for a few days around Christmas then, so you could be able to celebrate your birthday. Maybe. Are you tier 2 or 3 where you are?
We're tier 2 at the moment. We're tier 2. I mean, my mum cancelled Christmas at the weekend, so.
Oh.
Yeah. But understandably, she's old. Doesn't want to die. I'd rather she stayed living and I'd miss Christmas.
That is a fair point. So I was just hoping that they'd get those 15-minute COVID tests out quick enough for us to go and get them all done Christmas Eve or something, so the family can all get tested when they come round. Anyway, it's been lovely pleasure speaking to you. Thank you for joining us. I'm sorry about the first time a few months back, just before lockdown. We had a technical halfway up in the car. We had a technical issue, and then COVID took over, and somewhere along the line we didn't get it rescheduled properly, but we're here now, and have a great Christmas.
And you too, and I'll speak to you soon. All right then, bye.
Bye now. The endings.